What's up, everyone, and welcome back to the latest Fantasy Author Lounge. This month, I am joined by none other than TL Greylock. How are we doing? Great to have you in the lounge.
Thank you for having me. It's nice to be here.
How are you doing on this fine summery day?
I'm doing. I'm technically taking vacation right now, so that basically means I'm staying in my house even more than I already was. But it's nice that I kind of get a little more time to devote to writing this week before I have to kind of get back to work. The really nice thing is I do have summer hours at my job, so summers are like a really good time for me to write. So I am in the middle of that right now, which is fun.
Cool. What are you writing?
So I'm writing book 2 in this new series that I have. The first book comes out on August 4th, and it's called Shadows of Ivory. It's the first book in the Godforged Chronicles. This is the second one, and I started it actually 30 days ago. I started it on July 1st, so I'm kind of cruising along pretty well. It's been fun so far, but as a very much a discovery writer, like I never know what I'm doing, so I don't really know how this is going to go.
That sounds awesome, though. I do love that stage, and I like that feeling because I'm more of a planner, but I allow myself these kind of just sections to be a discovery writer and a pantser in. So yeah, I love that when you just get the flow. Don't know where you're going, but it's going to be fun. Awesome. So for anyone watching who doesn't know who TL Greylock is, why don't you tell us about yourself, your journey, and your books?
Sure. So I'll start by saying my name is Taya. It's a little weird for me to go by initials, but it's the decision I made back in like 2015. So here I am as TL Greylock. My name is Taya, and I live in Boston, Massachusetts, and I'm not a full-time writer, but that is kind of my goal. I see that hopefully somewhere in my future.
Yeah.
But right now I have a full-time job at a small private high school in Boston. My favorite part of my job is that I am the girls' ice hockey and lacrosse coach,
Awesome.
which is super fun and allows me to really build relationships with those student athletes and also, I'm a better hockey player than they are. So like I get to tool around on them on the ice.
I bet you are, yeah. I was just going to say, like, I've heard a lot about your ice hockey prowess from like just random author meetups that we've had. And yeah, it's something I kind of wanted to see is you just like tear it up on the ice because I've really got into ice hockey since coming to Canada 3 years ago. It's like my new favorite sport. I have to. It's the law.
I started playing hockey when I was 10 years old. I was actually a figure skater first, which is why I'm a good skater. So that's like my foundation as a hockey player is as a skater. And that's kind of where I made my mark on all the teams I played on. I have coached a couple future Olympians. So they became Olympians after I had them. I like to say that, but like that gives me a little more credit than I probably deserve because like they were well on their way to being Olympians without me. Nice. But whatever, like I was part of that process, right? I'm very excited that hockey's coming back this very weekend, Saturday and Sunday. I'll be watching a lot of hockey. I'll have to squeeze my writing in. Yeah. It'll be hard to do, but I will do it. And it's tough because like I have a sort of this weird. I understand like the issues with bringing back pro sports, and we're in the middle of this pandemic still. I am not one of those people who thinks the pandemic is over. So, but on the other hand, like I'm really really excited to get to watch some hockey again. It's been a long time, so
it's a good escape, right? You need something a little bit. Like my thing is either watching TV or playing the Xbox, but we all need that. And luckily, that didn't go away during the pandemic. But yeah, sports I completely understand. So where did you make the transition then from ice hockey and this world into writing books? Was it something you always did on the side, or was it something you picked up?
I guess I would say I always kind of did it a little bit on the side. Definitely through my teenage years, I wrote a lot of bad stories.
Me too.
When I went off to college, that definitely kind of took a backseat to my studies and playing college sports as well. But once I got out of college and kind of became a real adult, it definitely crept back into my life and what I wanted to do. I started writing the first book in my original series, which is called The Song of the Ash Tree. I started writing that in the fall of 2013. And at that point, I had never completed a final draft of anything, like anything long, anything real, right? But the thing is that I have an uncle who was on he was like a pioneer of self-publishing.
Wow.
He writes mysteries. He has a mystery thriller series set in Lake Tahoe. I think his first book, it was either 2000 or 2001. So like this was right at the beginning of all of that. And he puts out a book a year. He has a very devoted fan base. Like his success and his ability to show like this is possible. Yes, it's a lot of work, but it's possible. Definitely, when it came to me writing this book in 2013, I sort of had this realization that like, okay, I could probably do this. And I think that especially kind of clicked into place when I hit the 50,000 mark on that manuscript, because I was like, oh, this feels nice. And like that was kind of a new feeling. Yeah. So I think my uncle's definitely a big inspiration as to why I figured I could do this. And it never really occurred to me to try the traditional path because I had this example of what could be done. And I mean, at this point, he says that like I far outpaced him just by being younger and like kind of more on top of the, you know, the industry and what you do. And like, so he's puts me as being like way ahead of him now, which I disagree with. But it's definitely cool that like we can kind of share this with each other as well. So
that's really cool. What an interesting journey. Yeah, because I think that's literally the first time I've heard that sort of journey of having someone in the family or someone you know who can literally guide you through that path, because that's so tricky for first-time authors, especially back around 2012, 2013, before it become effectively standardized-ish, like it is now. Yeah, awesome stuff. What did you write after that?
So the first book, Song of the Ash Tree, the first book is actually The Blood-Tainted Winter. So I actually wrote the draft for all 3 books in that series back to back. So I started in the fall of 2013 and I finished, it was 18 months. It took me 18 months and I wrote every day for 18 months. And that was the first time I'd ever done that. So
wow, dedication.
Yeah, it was a really good period for me. I mean, I've said this a lot, and it's maybe seems a little cheesy, but I do feel like that story. I'll just say it's based in the world of Norse mythology, which is something that's very kind of close to my heart. And writing that story, it felt like the story that I was meant to write, and it still does feel like that story. Like obviously, I've moved beyond that, and there are a lot of other things I want to write. But that story feels very much like a big part of me and who I was and who I still am. And so I think in some ways that's why it worked for me, that I was able to write every day for 18 months and make that happen while working and you know, all that stuff. So yeah, it's a very important story to me still, for sure.
Absolutely. Tell us all about Shadows of Ivory and the Godforged Chronicles, because that, I mean, the cover, we'll get it up and we'll show people, but that cover is awesome. And it gives me like kind of almost a non-Western vibe, which I'm always excited about as well. So yeah, tell us more about that.
So for the first time in my life, I have like a somewhat catchy tagline for a book, which is amazing because I'm really bad at those. But I like to say that this series is Indiana Jones meets Renaissance Italy.
Sold.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm in.
The main character is an archaeologist. She's very much an academic. She wants to learn about the past, about the people who made these things that she's digging out of the ground and all that stuff. And there is sort of somewhat of a treasure hunting aspect to it, because she does run a company with her uncle. They make money. They're very good at what they do. But there is sort of a difference of opinion between her and her uncle in terms of how they should be doing their work to some degree. So that's a little bit background on her. The other main character in the first book is her rival, basically. And that family very much is about the treasure hunting, about the glory, about getting the money. That family comes from they're new money. They're newer money. So they have kind of that chip on their shoulder. And something that the reason why I say Renaissance Italy is that something I really wanted to kind of evoke was that power play, politics struggle of the Italian city-states. If you think about the Medici and stuff like that. And so they live in it's called the Seven Cities of Balara, and they have very long-standing alliances, and they are very much a united entity against maybe outside forces, but they definitely like have their own individual identities, and maybe they don't always get along and stuff like that. So while these two families are based in the same home city, I did want to kind of evoke that idea of like there's a lot of politics going on that the book will never touch on, but there's a lot of stuff under the surface too.
So in the background, which like deepens that whole world for the reader there, doesn't it? Yeah, love doing stuff like that. Cool. Yeah, and like you said, writing book 2, this is going to be a trilogy? That's
the plan. I mean, I don't plan. I don't really know, but
awesome.
It feels good, so we'll see.
Yeah.
Yeah. So book book 2 is interesting because so the first book had the 2 major point of views, and then I had a third point of view that he had only 5 or 6 chapters, but he's setting stuff up for like book 3. And this book, though, with book 2, I introduced an existing character, but made him a point of view character. And because his story was able to kind of drive a part of the story that I wouldn't have had access to otherwise. So it's been fun to kind of, obviously, you know, you're going back into that world. I wrote book 1 last summer, so this summer I'm revisiting it, and it's been a while. So I have to kind of readjust and get back into that mindset, but at the same time, I get to play in the sandbox of a character whose head I haven't been in before.
Really
and
interesting.
That was actually really helpful for me because I started the book with 2 of his chapters. And so suddenly it didn't really matter what I said or did, I realized, because like we haven't heard from him before. We haven't seen how he thinks or what he does really to the same extent. So that was actually nice, and I'll probably do that in the future as well, because it gives me a little bit of leeway, and because I don't plan, like I just have to kind of go with what feels right in the moment, and basically that allowed anything to feel good. So
yeah, that's really cool. I love that excuse when you go back, and it's just fresh eyes, isn't it?
And it's a very different experience from drafting my original trilogy, because I did write those 3 books back to back, essentially as one big story. So this is my first experience of having a significant amount of time pass between, you know, a book 1 and a book 2, and so figuring out how my brain was going to be able to deal with that was I was a little nervous, because I was like, this is, you know, a year's passed almost, and what is this going to do for my process here? But it's working okay.
That's really cool. So let's talk about your writing process then. Obviously, like you said, you're writing amidst a full-time job as well. So are you a morning writer, evening writer? Do you use music? Do you get drunk? What?
So I'm kind of a little all over the place, but right now, because I have my summer hours with work, what I'm trying to do is focus on work in the morning, try to get everything done so that come like 1 o'clock in the afternoon, I can just write. And in that case, I'll write into the evening a lot. I mean, I take breaks. I'm not sitting there for like 7 hours. Yeah. So my brain is kind of in this mindset now of like 1 o'clock is writing time, and that's working pretty well. The problem is that like right now on vacation week, I am trying to get myself to write in the morning, and it's been hard. So, but I'll keep trying. I generally have music going. I have a big writing playlist filled mostly with like soundtracks and trailer music and stuff like that. But occasionally I switch to like stuff that I would generally consider my like sing out really loud while I'm driving playlist. But since I don't go anywhere these days, I don't get to listen and like sing out loud in my car while I'm driving. Sing very badly, by the way. Let's just add that.
Me
but
too.
I haven't gotten to do that recently. So like I've been doing a little more of that. Like especially at the beginning of a writing session, I'll kind of like belt out something really badly, and then I'll switch to my writing playlist and kind of dial it. So.
We'll spin your preferred song for belting, because I've got a song that I start the morning with. So what's your current belting song, getting yourself into the mood song?
I would say I have probably 3 or so that do pretty well for me. One is Uptown Funk. It's a good one.
Solid choice. Solid choice.
And then I'm into White Flag.
Okay,
lately.
yeah.
Blinding Lights is good. And I will admit that like I'm not a Taylor Swift person. I have nothing against her, but I'm not. But the song London Boy is like super catchy, and I sing that all the time. So
have you ever seen the Uptown Funk Harry Potter version, the cover that's on YouTube? I think it's actually better. They managed to somehow put, I mean, it's done very well. It's an incredible like video. They've got like a whole setup of Harry Potter. They're in Hogwarts. Voldemort's singing, and it's really well done. All done with actors and makeup and costumes. But they managed to put the Harry Potter theme over the chorus of Uptown Funk, and it works. It's brilliant. Check it out afterwards, because I think,
I definitely will.
I just stopped listening to the original and just started listening to that one. That's all I listen to now. In terms of the market now that we're in 2020, aside from all the craziness that's gone on this year and still going on, the market at the moment is, to be honest, better than it was, but quite male heavy. I say that as a male author myself. But over the last couple of years, I've really seen a push to help bring the gender imbalance up to a balance, and to really promote women authors in SFF. Do you find that that's an issue for you personally as an author? Do you find some kickbacks from male authors not wanting to read a women author, or is it, how does it come across?
I think it's a little bit of everything sometimes. I mean, there is a reason why I chose to have a fairly androgynous sounding author name.
Right. Yeah.
Obviously, that was a decision I made a long time ago, and maybe now I wouldn't choose otherwise. But like, that was part of my thinking. Like, you don't necessarily want to be assumed to be a woman in this genre. And I do think that you see signs every now and then, good signs of positive change and improvement in that area. But then every once in a while you get like kind of pulled back into, well, there are so many people and so many readers who still automatically think certain things and make assumptions about female authors. And I think the issue is that we tend to get kind of pigeonholed, whether it's, with the romance, which I hate the fact that romance is like a slur. And I mean, it's not, it shouldn't be. It really bothers me. And, a lot of people tend to automatically think that, well, a woman's book is going to be full of, kissy love stuff all the time. And it's like, well, that's real life. So of course it's going to be in there. But, so I think, pigeonholing is a big issue, in a variety of ways. And then you see also the fact that, you walk into a bookstore and the books that are prominently displayed are more likely to skew male, and you just get those kind of reminders. And, you hear from readers who say, well, I don't pay attention to an author's genre when I buy a book, or author's gender when I buy a book. And I'm like, you may think that, but if you're not recognizing the fact that, like, what you're buying is influenced by what a publisher chooses to pick up and what a publisher chooses to market and what a bookstore chooses to display, there's so many steps between you and what you think you're doing. And so I think that's something that you see people talking about it, but I still think it's a huge thing that more people need to be more aware of.
Completely agree with you, though. There is a huge discrepancy and imbalance all the way from the publishers to the reader, even if the reader doesn't understand it or get it. And I think, we are definitely making an effort. I mean, I know I'm trying to as much as I can, but all I'm seeing at the moment are these fantastic women authors of SFF being, championed, winning awards. I mean, the SBFBO last year, the most recent one, the first time we've had a woman author as a winner as well. So it's great to see these changes, but what else can we do to really bring that discrepancy to zero and really make it a gender balanced market? What do you reckon? How are we going to fix the world?
I think I'm going to answer this in like 15 seconds and everybody will, it'll be solved forever. It's obviously a tough question, and there's a lot that goes into it, but I think that it starts with awareness. It starts with understanding why that discrepancy exists, and then being willing to do something about it as a reader, and consciously going out of your way to search out books by people you might not have found otherwise, whether it's women or people of color or whatever. And so I think that's a huge piece of it, but obviously, like, that's a very individual piece of it, and it's going to take a lot of individuals to make a big difference. But I think, like you said, we have made progress, and something that's helped me, or that I benefit from, is the fact that, like, I have a good group of author friends around me who I feel like are aware, and they do, make an effort. Exactly, right? They make an effort. And I also have had a couple instances where I've kind of called people out within that group and been like, you can't refer to, someone was referring to a woman who was, a mature woman, professional, and referred to her as a girl in like a context of relating a story. And I was like, dude, you can't do that. Like, she's supposed to be your peer. And like, so there, I think but then he responded very well to that, and was willing to like listen, and was like, you're right, you're absolutely right. And like, please call me out if it happens again. And so I think, like, I benefit from having those type of people around me within this profession, and that's great. But I also know that there are probably a lot of women out there who don't necessarily have the right kind of support group or whatever. So I think, there's a lot to do, but it starts with everyone being willing to do their part on an individual basis to make a difference.
I think you're 100% right. And I think, we're seeing a lot of that with, obviously the entire of this year. And we saw the BLM protests, and, there's just a complete separation of people who get it and people who don't get it. And I think it's great to see the people who do get it actually taking the time and standing up, for a lot of people for once,
Yeah.
and actually just educate, not insult, not attack, educate, offer, a different point of view. So tell us about your tricks for marketing then, because obviously we talked about self-publishing, talked about writing, and it's one of those things I can just see right there. You're like, marketing tricks? Let's talk about less tricks then. What's your approach? I mean, because every author's different, every author uses different tools, platforms, etc. So I always like to find out, not to steal anything, but for the watchers out there and the viewers, what's your approach to marketing? How do you view it as an overall strategy? I mean, what are the things you focus on?
I mean, it's definitely not my favorite thing. It's not the element of this whole job that I like the most, but I have kind of learned some things along the way. One of those things was late last fall, I put out a box set of the Song of the Ash Tree, and I specifically I put together some Facebook ads with somebody's help who kind of had mastered Facebook ads, and that was very, very successful, which was like, wow, okay, I did a successful marketing thing. And the box set did really well, which was amazing. My trick now is that with the Godforged Chronicles, because I am writing under the Wraithmarked imprint, and that basically means I don't have to do the marketing. So that's my current trick. That's all up to Bryce. And luckily, that's something that he has a better head for and just enjoys a little more the business side of things than I do. So that's all on him now.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's a very good trick. I like that. Get other people to do it for you.
Exactly.
I think what we're seeing now is, in terms of the market and the industry, obviously authors becoming savvier individually, but also banding together. I mean, I'm doing it. I'm co-writing as well. And you've, done this with Bryce O'Connor. And it's, I feel that we're kind of combining forces a little bit to take each other's strengths and create basically almost like a Power Rangers Zord author, that sort of thing.
Yeah,
and I think
exactly.
it's amazing.
I think it's also when you say you take each other's strengths, that's especially the case with my partnership with Bryce right now, is that technically we are co-authors. His name is on the cover with mine. But the book is 99.8% me. And I mean, I wrote actually the first draft of it before we had ever signed a contract. So
Cool. Nice.
this is my book.
Yeah.
And he's, very aware of that. And he had a hand in the kind of final stage of the editing process, and which was helpful. And I know moving forward, I can bounce some ideas off of him, and he'll help out, and we'll edit together and stuff like that. But in the sense that it's taking my writing and his kind of business side of things and very much just smushing them together into something that hopefully works really well. So it's on the surface, it's co-authoring, but it's not really at all. And it's something that I think is working pretty well for both of us.
It's community, isn't it? I mean, that's something that's come up almost every single fantasy author lounge interview we've done, is this idea of banding together, either for advice, moral support, even just ranting every now and again about something of this job that we find that we hate, like marketing. And I just think it is, literally, I think it's one of the biggest sea changes we've seen in self-publishing overall, is from going to these individual solo authors that's just, trying to do it themselves. And then suddenly now we found each other over the last 5, maybe more years. And I think really starting to push that. It's just fantastic. I love it. It's easily one of my favorite parts of the self-publishing industry and market.
Definitely.
Let's round up with your hopes for the future. So obviously Godforged Chronicles. What's next after that? Is that something you'll discover along the way? Is it something you've got a list of book ideas to work through?
I'm definitely not an author who has this ever-expanding list of ideas. I don't feel that way about my brain or how it works. But I do, there's a project I want to get back to that I actually put some time into between finalizing the final publication of the Song of the Ash Tree and then finally getting to the point where I was writing Shadows of Ivory. There was a gap there of a couple years where, I had just finished my master's. I had moved, back from the UK to the US. I was starting a new job. I didn't really do a lot of writing for a while. I did try. And the project I was working on is something I do want to get back to. It kind of gets me back more to my mythology roots that I explored with the Norse stuff in the Song of the Ash Tree. But this would be Roman mythology. I really want to do a kind of like a retelling of the foundation myth of Rome. Like the story of Romulus and Remus, but hopefully kind of throwing it on its head a little bit and humanizing it a little bit. Cool. And that's definitely a project I want to put a lot of time into and get right, and which is part of why I struggled with it. There were some aspects of some of the relationships, like the relationship between Romulus and Remus. I was like, this has got to be like perfect, and I wasn't sure I was getting it. And then on the other hand, I was also, for the first time, trying to write in two timelines and like interspersing them. And I just felt like I wasn't quite ready to really tackle that. So when I did put it aside and then kind of started moving on to Shadows of Ivory, and I do, that is definitely, if not my next project, like it's there, it's happening eventually. That's for sure.
Cool. That's what you need, just the one after. If you always have that, you'll just keep going, right?
Yeah.
So one last curveball question. If you had one tip for an author out there who's writing their first book, what would it be?
Oh, that is hard.
I know we didn't prepare for this either, so I've just thrown this at you.
I think I'm definitely one of those people who doesn't think like there's one right way to do any of this, right?
Agreed.
So like, I'm not going to tell someone that my way is the right way. But I think that, you know, when I was drafting the 3 books of the Song of the Ash Tree, I did write every day for 18 months. And last summer, I wrote Shadows of Ivory in 68 days. 68 out of 70. I missed 2 days in there. This summer, that's basically what I'm attempting to do, and I've written for 30 of the last 30 days. And I'm not going to tell anyone like you have to write every day, because that's not true. But I think that it's worth exploring it, as if you're trying to figure out your process and you're trying to figure out what works for you. I think trying it is worthwhile, because there's something about habit and routine and staying in that mindset, you know, that can really help potentially, depending on who you are as a person and all that stuff. So I think it's definitely worth trying it, and I would recommend that.
Awesome. Great tip. I think you're absolutely right there. So I'll tell you what, for anyone watching and wants to find out more about TL Greylock, Shadows of Ivory, Song of the Ash Tree, where do we find you online?
The best place to find me, where I'm most active, is Twitter. I'm at TL Greylock. I do have a Facebook author page with the same name, not over there very much. I have a website as well, tlgreylock.com, so you can kind of like check out a lot of basic information there. But definitely, like, if you want to interact with me, come to Twitter. I also do have an Instagram that I use a lot. It's less authory and more personal, but like, hey, if you want to just get to know me a little bit, this one's harder to, it's Taya_ rhymes with Taya. So that one's a little harder to communicate.
Nice.
But
we'll get them up on the screen.
Yeah, Twitter and Instagram are where I hang out the most. So if you want to come find me, that's where I am.
Brilliant stuff. Well, yeah, I urge anyone watching to go out and check out TL Greylock's books, because they are awesome. And if, like, just the covers, I mean, you know how much I'm a fan of covers. You have got some savagely good cover art as well. So yeah, well worth the look. The insides are even better than the cover. So thank you so much for joining us today. It's been an absolute pleasure. I think it's been a really interesting, important conversation. And yeah, I can't wait to see your success. I can't wait to dig into Shadows of Ivory.
Thank you so much. It was a lot of fun.